morning, everyone. Sorry for the delay in getting started. My name is Eric Bowling, and we are getting set up. Some folks are joining on now. Looks like we've got some attendees now popping on, which is great. Just want to thank you for attending today's session. We're going to talk about moves, adds, and changes in the Mitel Connect platform. And so what we're going to do is do it, short and sweet. About 30 minutes or so for presentation. We will take questions in the side panel of the control panel. If you do have questions, please post them and we will answer all of the questions. We are also going to record this, and I just said that to remind myself that we are going to record it. Let me do here, let's see here. All right, we are recording, excellent. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Eric Kelsey, who is one of our senior Mitel Connect engineers, and he will walk us through today's presentation. Thanks for joining.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Eric Kelsey. I'm one of the lead engineers here at IPC. I'm actually going to get my screen sharing started. So during this 30 minutes, we're going to talk about the most common ways to do moves, adds, and changes. And we're going to specifically focus on the user side of things. I'm going to talk about a few features inside of there, including users, user groups, and some of the options we have in the bulk edit tool, which I find that a fair amount of people aren't even aware that it's there. So, in the Mitel Connect world, a lot of the changes are fairly self-explanatory when it comes to changing a user, moving them, adding them. So I'm just going to look at, I'm actually going to bring up my account here so I don't mess up anybody else's today. All right, so one of the first things I do want to talk about, because this, I do a lot of training on the side as well, things that I run into with, installed systems that we have out there. The search tool obviously is a very important feature here, especially if your system's a larger system. So one of the things that I get into the habit of if I'm doing moves, adds, and changes is the first thing I do is hit the magnifying glass here that gives you your search option. This will bring up, and unfortunately it's not by default, but this will bring up a search field that's up here, and you can search in every single column with the exception of a couple, primary port and status, but you can sort or search by voicemail server, by what switch they're on, what kind of access license they have, connect client, phone only, what user group they're in, site, username, extension, all that good stuff. So when you do search, I did a search for Eric. That brings up Mr. Bowling as well, but I'll do this. All right, so and you can put multiple search features here. So, I have something in the first name column, the last name column, and I can also add in to see what the Connect client license is. As far as your changes are going to be concerned inside of this account, that's all going to happen in your bottom panel here. Now, the split pane view is good for a lot of things. However, once you're digging into an actual change, one thing you can do is there is an option here to expand your details of certain panels. So at this point, I no longer need the top side. So I'm going to actually get rid of this. And this does make it easier from an admin perspective on being able to see more information in the panel as you make your changes. So for example, if I wanted to change my name here, I can type in a change. You will notice that up here you have some illuminated buttons now, save and reset. So if you wanted to save that particular change, obviously hit save, but also the reset button is something that I use a lot that I don't see a ton of people using. But if you hit reset, that will undo any changes you've made. It's also important from a perspective of if you accidentally hit something and you see this reset button come up, maybe you don't know what you actually changed, hitting the reset key is a pretty valuable tool. So changes we can make in individual accounts. Obviously, we can change name information, extension information, etc., email addresses, client usernames. Assigning new DIDs is a change that you can make here that I do see fairly often. So inside of this window, you'll see the DID settings is actually kind of collapsed a little bit. Hitting the change settings option will bring up your DID listings, and then you will have your DID ranges inside of your system. Once you find a DID range that you would like to use, you will notice inside of here we've got our 31 of 73. That means out of the 73 available DIDs we have, 31 are available. If you were to make changes to this and you don't know the ranges, you could click into the View System directory for DID usage, and you can find specific DIDs that are open. I'm not going to do that right now, but that would be a way of finding your, because it doesn't tell you out of the 73 which 31 are available. So using this option right here would get you there. Something I do want to highlight, it's not so much a move ad change, but this is something we get a lot of calls and tickets open for, is caller ID overwrite. So something that we do when we deploy systems, we do some custom file string entries that is just a standard practice for us for new installs, which enables us to affect caller ID on our system. So right here, we have the section that says overwrite DID. What this will do is there are some people out there in your organization that don't like their DIDs being displayed. They would prefer a main number to be their caller ID. So on this section right here, I can come in and I can set the caller ID to IPC's main number here. Regardless of what my DID setting is, this is going to be my caller ID. Okay. Even if you don't have a DID, the caller ID that you put in here, sometimes you would like it to, if you had a call center, for example, maybe there's a direct number that goes into a call center group. Instead of the main number that might go to a receptionist, we might want to put a different number here. Typically on a non-DID assignment, we have settings that we put in here for the BTN, which is the billing telephone number, which typically is like a, whatever the main number is on your phone bill, for example. So maybe we don't want that particular BTN as the actual caller ID, so we would change it right here. All right. Other changes you can make here, you can change your license type, your access license. License type refers to extension of mailbox, or extension only. So if the user needs a mailbox plus extension, obviously there, just an extension only, or mailbox only, which is less common. I'm going to talk about user groups here in a second, but user groups, as far as changing a user group from point A to point B, can be done here. So if I want to go from executives to, I've got a trading group that I call Secret Squirrels, I can change that, and this is my new user group. Again, I'm going to dig into user groups in just a minute. Most importantly, down here, as far as changes I see most admins make, will be your client password. The client password is the Connect client itself. So if I wanted to reset my password, I can do it there. I do recommend clicking this if you have a user that calls in and says they'd like their client password changed or reset because they forgot it. Make sure you click the must change on next login and hit save. So that part right here, that covers your general tab. So we do see our general tab is right here. Moving into other tabs like telephony brings up other options that as admins you're allowed to change. I don't see as many changes through here, but there are a couple that are fairly important. Automatic output preference. We do have a lot of users that are unaware of how to change from a default audio of speaker, which is our default. A lot of users will have a headset. We have 3 options for a headset there: headset, wireless, Bluetooth. Selecting this will change the default mode for the user for every phone call. So if they have an inbound call, we have soft keys that say things like answer, for example. Hitting that would, if I have this as my setting, would be my speaker option. But changing that to wireless headset is what we would use for someone who wants their headset as their primary mode. Another fairly important one that I see a lot as far as changes is this one right here, the enable use of soft phone. Typically, we will have this as the licensing that comes with Connect gives a soft phone license for all users. This is typically something we're going to set up during the install. However, if users are missed or if there's a new user that you'd like to add soft phone to, right here under the telephony tab is where we'll see our soft phone enablement. In the voicemail tab, this is where you would reset your voicemail password, which is a very common change we'll make. So setting that, again, we have the same option here, must change on next login. Make sure you select that if you're doing a reset for a user. The last thing in the voicemail tab is your email delivery options. Most end users like having a WAV file attachment sent to their email, which is used in a variety of different ways. A lot of people would like to have a backup copy outside of their voicemail box. This one is important from a remote perspective if you're checking your emails for your company on your smartphone. There are two different types of email that we can do for WAV files. There's an email voicemail as link. This is something that's part of the Outlook integration that we receive on an initial install of the Connect client. That one, you can only play that particular file through your Outlook client on your PC. If you're using a mail app on a smartphone, that email link comes across empty on a smartphone. If you like to be able to change check voicemails through an actual email, the attached WAV file is the option that the user will need to have. So there's always been a lot of confusion on which one is which. Make sure we use the attached WAV file. Last thing I want to talk about as far as changes on a user is your routing section. So we do have a lot of options for call forwarding, call handling. In Connect, they're called call availability states. So the first tab, so this is actually one of these sections that's got multiple tabs. So we have our routing, and you'll notice we've got phones, ring me, and availability state and power routing. So the phones, these are phones that we're going to add in here for call forwarding. This is a setting that an end user has the ability to set up on their own via the client. However, some users are not very savvy when it comes to adding phones like that. So on the back end, as administrators, we have the ability of adding phones to their account. So I've got my cell phone here. Typically, what I would recommend is always accept calls by answering. I do see a lot of timeout issues that occur when people are forwarding calls to a cell phone or outside number. And also another recommendation, this is just tools of the trade, 10 years of exposure to this on my end. When you are using cell phones for forwarding, or you're using some sort of forwarding option, the default number of rings for this is going to be 3. I always recommend that this gets ticked up to a minimum of 5. There's a good reason for that. I'm not going to get to the details, but if you have users complaining that they've set up some sort of forwarding mode and they're having issues answering the call in time before a timeout hits, check the number of rings that they have under their phones. Typically what happens is the call has to transfer out, reach the cell phone, and they have to answer it. The rings that we're talking about here are timed. So sometimes when the call gets out and it makes it through the cell phone carrier and things like that, 3 rings is not a lot of time for that phone call to be completed. So that's a little hint that I would recommend. On the ring me state, this discusses things like additional phones. So there are additional phones options where if you would like your cell phone to ring at the same time as your phone, this is a pretty popular forwarding mode. I can set up for the user ring me states. So if I wanted my cell phone to ring while I'm in available mode, I have mine set up. We use mobility here at IPC. So I've got my cell as my first phone and my mobility app as my second. However, you will notice I can add up to a total of 7 phones inside of my phones section. So if I had a second cellular or like a landline at home, I could add that one as well. And the additional phone option will enable me to see which phones are ringing which. So under availability states, actually, I'll have one more thing here. For Ring Me, you'll notice at the top here, there's incoming calls ring. I do want to bring up my client for this because this will make a little more sense. So on a client, a user will have primary assignment, right? Usually when a phone is assigned to an actual desk phone, there'll be an option here for desk phone. I can also have this as a soft phone option, but right here, there's an external assignment option, okay? So this external assignment number is this right here, incoming calls ring. I know the nomenclature is a lot different, but that's what it's talking about. So if you get a user that says, hey, I've got to be out of the office, can you make sure that all my phones ring my cell phone? That's how you do it. So go and typically users will already have a phone program, but if they don't, you can say, hey, what number would you like to forward to? Type in a label, give it a phone number, then go to my ring me option, select that number that you added. In your availability states, this is discussing your call handling modes, your call availability states. So available is the one that we use for calls coming into your phone. It rings, goes to voicemail. You're in a meeting and out of office. These are your ones that typically discuss do not disturb options, where they're going straight to your voicemail. It doesn't have to be that way. That's how it is by default. But inside of here, you can make changes to how many rings it is, what's your busy and no answer destination. There's also an option called personal operator that every user has the ability of choosing a person that is their 0 option. And this is inside of your voicemail greeting. So when I have a voicemail greeting, I have a voicemail greeting for all my modes that say, if you need immediate assistance, please press 0. Mine goes to our receptionist, Marsha, but this can be anybody. So if you've got somebody that a user works with and they would like to have a 0 out option in their voicemail, they would need to put it in their greeting, and then that 0 option will transfer it. Now, before we go out of here, I do want you to notice one little thing. Every time you make a change in any area of this user, you will notice there is this little icon right here. It's like a little pencil. Every single pencil you see means I've made a change somewhere. So it tells me on each tab, I've made a change here on my ring me option. I've made a change on my availability state. I've made a change in the general tab, which was my client password. Again, to undo all that, we're hitting reset. And that will eliminate all of my little pencil icons. It lets me know that all my changes have been reverted. All right. So from a user perspective, there's one other thing I'd like to discuss as far as changes are concerned, and that's the bulk edit tool. All right, when you select multiple users, now, one thing that is very, very, very critical here, whatever user you want to be the template for your changes, right? So, for example, I've changed my user group to secret squirrels, okay? That's the user group I want to apply to everybody. So I'll do this right here, okay? Then there's a bulk edit tool. So I hit bulk edit, and this only illuminates when you have multiple users selected. From here, you can change the group or the users you have selected, and here are the options that we have available in the bulk edit tool. I can do a bulk edit on user group, call stack depth, personal assistant, which is that 0 out option. I can change everybody's email domain. I can change license type, access license. I can move between, if you have 2 or more of the servers or appliances for instant messaging, I can change that. I can change everyone's mailbox server. If we have added a new server like a DDS, we can move everybody over to a different mailbox server. I can change conference bridge appliance. I can change the ability to use soft phone or not. So for example, if I wanted to change everybody here to the IntelliPeer SIP test group, and I wanted to make a change to their access license where I'm going to make everybody an operator. Okay, so I'm making 2 changes here. I'll hit save. It'll say it's been queued, and to see your results, you'll notice at the bottom here it says see results for tab, or results tab for results. So I'll hit refresh. Hasn't happened yet. Hasn't happened yet. It sometimes takes a little bit, but once the changes have been made, you'll see the successes on that section right there. All right. You will also notice we have a bulk delete tool. You really don't want to do that, but if you need to delete a whole bunch of users, you can hit bulk delete for those users on after you've selected the 2 users. Okay. All right. As far as additions to this go, when I do end user training, administrator training, all that good stuff, one of the things I recommend is that when you are adding users as your system goes and ages through the years, I never hit this new button to create a user. There's a couple really good reasons for that. We do have a copy button, okay, and especially for larger systems, if you want a user to be exactly like this user, so I have a new user coming into our customer success center. All right, so I'm going to go find William, who is one of our customer success agents. I have a new agent starting in that area, so I'm going to copy his profile. And you'll notice this is important because he's got his, they have their own user group, they have their own access license that they use specifically for that area. So I'm going to copy this guy right here. So the things that it copies, it's going to copy license type, access license, user group, your site, okay, and also your mailbox server. So those are the things, the very basic things that it actually copies over. After that, it's just a matter of making your user here. So just say John Doe. All right. The extension, this is always going to be something random. A lot of times it's depending on what the last extension that was built, it's going to go to the next one after that. Don't really care too much about it, but if I wanted this to be 8050, I can. You'll notice once I started changing the name here, the email address and the client username changed as well. All right. Now, one setting that does not get moved over, it automatically will not assign a DID. So you would have to go here, give it a DID. So our next available DID that's open in our range here is 7243. Right? It did copy over the override caller ID here. That's great. And then after that, it's just a matter of assigning a phone, which is based off your MAC address. MAC addresses, for those that don't know, they're looking on the back of the phone. All the Mitel 480 phones, 400 series phones start with a 001049. So find the phone that you would like, and then we're going to save that user. And that is now an active user on our system. Settings it does not change or it does not copy over. It's not going to copy over any of the call routing. It's not going to change or copy over some of the telephony settings, but it does copy a few. For instance, call stack depth, automatic off hook is something that it will copy. It will copy things like soft phone as well. So a lot of the telephony settings will come over, some will not. It just really depends on which one it is. All right. So I did mention I did want to discuss user groups really quickly, so I'm going to go into that real quick. User groups, depending on the size of your system, is a very powerful tool inside of the Mitel Connect PBX. The user groups enable us to make changes not on a wholesale level, but it enables us to segment out our group. So if we make a change to a user group, it affects everybody in that group. And typically what we're going to do there is we're putting departments, for example, that might do the same kind of calling into the same groups. So a lot of these that you see here are ones that come with the system. Just off the top of my head, anonymous telephones is one, audio conference, house telephones, executives, etc. But you'll notice we've got some ones that we've created ourselves. For example, we've got Knox Staff as a really good example of this. Knox Staff has their own name, and then within user groups, we have 3 types of class of service. We have telephony, call permissions, and voicemail. So this one has Knox Staff as its class of service, no restrictions for call permissions, and large mailbox. The trick in user groups is to create different class of services. So when we make a change to a class of service, it's not affecting multiple groups. For example, you'll see fully featured here, which is one of the class of services that comes with the system. If I make a change to fully featured, any group that is assigned to it, so it actually will tell you what groups are assigned to this. So anybody in anonymous telephones, executives, IntelliPure bundle test, SIP test, etc. If I make a change here to, like, for instance, call stack depth, I want it to be 10 now. Every user group that has that receives that change. All right, so for my Knox Staff, you'll notice it just has Knox Staff, okay? And the reason we're doing that is because they have specific things that they have in here, like they use call recording. So they've got some call recording options. And you'll notice there's other telephony things that you can change here. For example, you can change call stack depth, your max buddies per user, which is actually your contacts window in your client. Private contacts is your Outlook, the amount of contacts we allow them to upload from Outlook to their Connect client. You'll notice the ranges here show you your minimum and your maximum. So again, if I change this to 1,000, that change is only going to affect their ability to import more contacts from Outlook, and it's only going to affect the Knox Staff. You'll have other options in here, like how many, what's the maximum amount of people they can have in an ad hoc conference through the Mitel phone. You can change trunk-to-trunk transferring if you don't want them to be able to transfer outside of the building, if you don't want them to do paging, if you don't want them to be able to do extension assignment out to their cell phone. That's in the telephony. And these user group settings will override anything inside the individual user. So if I make a user and I put a cell phone in there and I enable them to forward out, that's fine. It'll let me do that. But if this is not part of their user group, it's going to override it. So if I uncheck that right there, it doesn't matter if every user in the Knox Staff group has a cell phone that they use to forward out to. The telephony actually strips that away from it. So it is important to know that some of these features in here, regardless of your setting on the individual user, their user group can't override it. And there's additional things here. I'm not going to, talk about all of them, but there are some important ones in here, like whisper paging, barge in, silent monitoring, things that we do for, quality assurance. That is a feature that's controlled by the class of service, which is under telephony, which again is part of user groups. Your call permissions in here for user groups, this is merely talking about what kind of calls we want them to be able to do. Internal onlys, local only, long distance, all, do we want to add restrictions, things of that nature. Your voicemail permissions, this merely is talking about things like how long can messages be when they're being left in their mailbox? How many messages can we have in an actual mailbox? This is important because if you have issues with voicemail storage and people not deleting things, we do have options in here to do auto delete. So we can delete saved and unheard messages as a group, 7 to 2,000 days. We can delete heard messages as well. And we do have an option to enable auto delete, which is an email notification that tells them you have voicemails that are going to be deleted in 7 days. All right. So if you do enable auto delete options, there is an option here to enable a notification for that.
Hey, Eric, real quickly, There was a question. There was a question asked about voicemail that I'm not sure I know the answer to, so I didn't answer it. What is the default client password and voicemail password, assuming they haven't been changed? Is there a default?
Yeah. So outside of I forget where it is here. Just give me a second. By default, it's going to be change me as a client password. And your voicemail password is going to be 1234, and we set that at the install level. There is a way, it's in one of these sections here, to change what your default is going to be after your install if you'd like. If you don't want it to be 1234, there is a way to change that. I'll have to think about this for a second, but I'll find that for you.
Okay, I think that answers the question.
All right, so I'm trying to get a couple more things in here, because I kind of talked a little longer than I wanted to on the user section. But I do want to talk really quickly about another thing that was in the bulk edit that I neglected, and that is your programming IP phone buttons. So there's a programmable button section here where if you're trying to program buttons on the phone for like monitored extensions and things like that, which is a very, very common thing. So I'll use mine as an example. All right. So let me go here. All right. So here, it's not yours. There's mine. So here's my monitor extensions. I've got also outbound speed dials as well. But program buttons, again, there's a ton of program buttons in here. I'm not going to talk about anything, all of these. Maybe another day we can talk on another training webinar. We can do that. But the key here is that monitor extensions, this is great. I can go through here and I can program buttons on an individual level. There's also options to do speed dial bookmarks on your client, which a fair amount of people I've noticed don't know this is here, but what this is, I'm going to bring up my client here. Right here, you'll notice toolbar buttons on the right side of my client. I have a couple that are programmed for my account. Where it's going, but so you'll see right here, I've got client toolbars. You can actually program speed dials and buttons, like monitor extension, for example. Those are ones that you can add to your client. So if people run out of buttons, for example, the 480's got 8 buttons on it. For a lot of people, that's not enough. So we'll see the use of the toolbar buttons here. And once a toolbar button is actually programmed, you'll hit the plus button, or the agent will. So you hit the plus button, and any button that you've programmed for that user is going to be in here. And then you hit the plus sign and it'll add that. There is one thing that I do want to talk about when it comes to programming buttons. If I select, let's see, if I selected myself here, I'm going to select Eric Kelsey. Okay. Important to note, this extension is in the bottom pane here. I click the next button. I go to bulk edit. All the way down here, this thing right here, it says copy from 7234 Eric Kelsey. So what I'm doing here is, if I select this, and if I hit save, I'm not going to do this because it'll ruin Eric's phones on his side. Anybody that I've checked, so if I added David, and if I added Jeff and Jennifer and Jim, if I select IP phones and hit save, every single person I've checked copies the buttons from Eric Kelsey's account. Okay, and again, this is something that I get a lot of calls on, or a lot of emails like, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to program buttons here. And there's a lot of little tips and tricks to it. And this is one that if you didn't do a lot of research or didn't read through the whole admin guide, you're probably never going to find this. So the bulk edit tool, again, is a very popular, powerful option, but this thing is a little tricky, I'm not going to lie, because if you don't have the user you're trying to copy at the bottom here, you could be copying from the wrong side of things. So when you're doing these bulk edit options, just be very careful as what you're doing here, especially when it comes to buttons. So, all right, I went a little over because we started a little late, but those are some of the things that I really wanted to talk about because they are fairly important. Eric?
Yeah, Eric, thanks so much for that. There were only a couple questions posted in the questions, so if you have any questions that you'd like us to answer today, please put those in there. Otherwise, you're always welcome to call into our Customer Success Center and get your questions answered there, or you can email your account representative for other items. Please know that we're going to be doing training sessions like this throughout the year. Every several weeks, we're going to just host another webinar that will cover a certain topic, a certain platform. Today was focused on the premises version of MyVoice Connect. And so we will have other platforms that we support in the future, as well as deep dives into additional administrative capabilities, client utilization, My Team Meetings, which is the video platform available in MyVoice Connect for video conferencing, for web conferencing. So a lot of great topics coming up this year. So stay tuned to our website, look at those. And if you have someone who would have liked to have attended but was not able to, please just come back and join us on our website. This will be recorded and posted up there. Let's see, there was a question about clearing out chat history for a user. I deleted the chat from my client and it shows back up when I start a new chat with that user.
That's a feature.
There you go.
Yeah, I understand what you're asking there. It's when you go to the messages section, right? This clears out after, I think it's a timer that's built into the database. So in your messages section, now you can clear this after you look at it a little bit, but the chat is never really gone from here. So even if you delete something, it's going to come back on the next chat. So,
and I believe that's because it's a server-based chat, right?
That's correct.
It's storing that on the server, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I don't see any other questions at the moment. Thank you for those. Client, there was a note here in the question that the client history retention was 459.
Yeah, you can change that. I don't know where that is offhand. Let me look around a little bit. You can change the client retention on there. So if you change that, then yeah, that would be a way to clear out your history a little quicker. But yeah, you change that, that will actually affect that, but there's no deletion.
Right, it'll automatically clear it out on both the server and the client too. Correct. So if you do that, make sure that folks, I believe it's a system-wide setting too. So if you set it to 10 days, everybody will have a maximum of 10 days of chat history.
Correct.
All right. I do not see any other questions. So at that, we will go ahead and close it out. Thanks again for your time today. Appreciate everyone being customers of IPC Technologies, and tune in for more training this year. Thanks so much.